Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books. Well, today we're talking about fixing major problems at Warner Bros. Discovery. David Zaslav and his team from Discovery have come over into their newly merged WarnerMedia division, and they are firing people. They are closing departments. They are merging departments. They are getting rid of Batgirl and many, many other shows. Up to $4 billion worth, maybe even more. Did a video about that yesterday, a woke wipeout at Warner Brothers. And it's not that they're going, of course, and targeting people or things that they think are woke. There's no discussion of what is and what isn't woke. The discussion is only what is our strategy, which they know very clearly. They want to make quality content that's on brand, that delivers for fans. That's what they've been doing at Discovery for years. That's how they made all that money in Discovery that put them in a position to be able to take over and control WarnerMedia, a much, much, much larger company. So they make good content, they make it on brand, and they make sure they get paid. That's what David Zaslav and his crew does, and that's what they're working on. But I came across this article thanks to one of you guys. Shout out to me on Twitter. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much for thinking of us. And this is from IndieWire. And they do a pretty good job of outlining some of the main issues at Warner Brothers Discovery and what's kind of being done to work on them. I know I'll probably have some additional insight on this for you, which is, one of my passions, Warner Bros. Discovery News. I've got more than 60 of these videos now. This is the playlist, and this is the latest one on the playlist, Fixing Major Problems. Okay, let's get into the article. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for supporting the channel. It's been a huge, huge help. Warner Bros. Discovery has new DC heads, but here are 8 major headaches it still faces. What DC heads? He's talking about James Gunn and Peter Safran that are taking over as co-CEOs of DC. It includes films, TV, and animation, but they haven't mentioned comics, not just yet. Where do the comics fit in? The comics they'll probably treat as a licensing division type of thing. They're not going to license them out, but it's going to be something self-contained and may not even wind up getting involved with Gunn and Safran at all. And we'll talk a little bit more about Gunn's background. People are mixed on him. To me, I have a positive feeling about him because I do think that he's going to be very well self-contained in a very disciplined management structure. So the things that we like about Gunn, the fact that he is wildly creative, he is self-made, he's a hardworking guy. He was making films for Troma, classic, small films company, and then made it out to Hollywood. He made it big, and you don't get to make it big doing anything anywhere without being a hard worker, creative, and knowing how to get things done. You got to give guy credit for something like that. As far as his other strange behaviors and things like that, and weird things he's done, they're going to be maintained. They're going to be controlled. And if not, he's going to get hamaded. He's going to get thrown out the door. All right, so let's get into this article from IndieWire. After a prolonged search for a new DC Films leader, Warner Bros. Discovery has finally solved just one of their major conundrums. Now, by the way, in business, when we have a problem and we say, hey, I need to staff somebody for this position. Okay, you staff them for that position. That doesn't mean you solved any problems, really. Things just begin at that point. So I do think that because they've worked with James Gunn and they've worked with Peter Safran before on projects at Warner Brothers, now Warner Brothers Discovery, they have working relationships, right? There's people there at the company that know each other and know what they can expect from these guys, and they're probably going to get what they can expect. So director James Gunn and producer Peter Safran are set to become the new co-chairman and CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery's superhero film, TV, and animation branch as of next week, starting on November 1st, which is very quick, very quick. They've been in conversation apparently for a couple of months. They were even going to Safran and James Gunn, asking them for suggestions on who might run DC. And what's also really interesting about this is I never thought that Zaslav would find his Kevin Feige. My gut feeling was that there isn't a Kevin Feige. He needs that role fulfilled. And I thought he might do it with 3 people, and he decided to pick these 2. So better 2 than 1, because then you've got responsibilities broken up a little bit, right? Okay, so the change was accompanied by the announcement that DC Films is being rebranded as DC Studios. Also, it's no longer going to be called DCEU. It's going to be referred to as DCU in competition with MCU. Probably not coincidentally, this puts it more in line with his closest rival, Marvel Studios, over at Disney. Just even naming the company that way, it's smart. It's a smart thing to do because people do tend to think of it in the same way, just by that sort of internal branding. Names matter. The duo of Gunn and Safran have worked extensively at the company. Gunn directed The Suicide Squad and HBO Max's Peacemaker, while Safran executive produced those projects and other DC films such as Aquaman and Shazam. Although Gunn's appointment as a director was with somewhat minimal producing experience is unusual for a major studio role like this. Details on their full vision are a bit hazy, but one thing is clear. The two will be inheriting a ton of baggage. A lot of work to do. On the one hand, Gunn and Safran will begin their post almost immediately after the relative box office success of Black Adam, which is doing pretty well. Black Adam opened with 67 million domestic, 73 million international. They're up to over 150 international with an equivalent, again, 50-50 split, basically. And Black Adam actually did better today on Wednesday than it did yesterday on Tuesday even. And Monday was a record. So they're running pretty good. The word of mouth on Black Adam is excellent. That movie is going to do very well. So on the other hand, they'll be tasked with whipping DC's film and TV slate into shape. Supposedly, it's messy and contending with some bad press plaguing Warner Bros. Discovery overall. With respect to dealing with the press, I don't think you're going to see James Gunn making press statements. I think that they have their publicity very well under control at Warner Bros. Discovery. They know how to communicate. They know what they want done. So don't expect James Gunn to be coming out to a microphone and cleaning up messes and discussing things like the cancellation of Batgirl. That's not going to be him. The company, which was founded a mere 6 months ago, April 22, from the merger between WarnerMedia and Discovery, has been racking up an impressive amount of controversy because Hollywood doesn't like that they're doing what needs to get done, which happens to be a woke wipeout. Sorry, it is. It is what it is. The company, now they say it carries a debt of $55 billion. That is not correct. April 22, 2022, the debt was $58 billion. By August, it was down to $52 billion. They paid off $6 billion in debt. You hear me say it often if you listen to my channel. And I repeat it constantly because it's important that people know they are actually paying down the debt. So the haters and the hater Hollywood media very often will not give them credit for what success that they've had. They have also seen, and this is absolutely true, a stock price cut of 50% in value since April. That was because of the merger. Okay. Now, also to remind you, the reason why the stock has dropped so much is a variety of things. But the number one thing is that 70% of the ownership of the combined company was given as an inheritance to AT&T. Meaning AT&T owned WarnerMedia, and 70% of this new Warner Bros. Discovery stock was given for free to the stockholders of AT&T. So imagine if, you lived in a neighborhood where all of a sudden, out of 10,000 homes, 7,000 of them were given to a new generation of people that never even bought the homes, never wanted to buy the homes. They even live in another country. Well, what are they going to do with them? They're all going to sell them at the same time. And that's been the massive selling for the most part on Warner Brothers Discovery. There are other issues, but that's not really what this video is about. I did do a video about it if you want to look it up, why the stock is low. It's on the playlist. You can check it out and you can see if you agree or not. If you agree, great. If you don't agree, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Please put it in the comments anywhere. I love seeing the comments. And I learn a lot from you guys. You guys are great. So according to the author, it's not the worst merger in history of the universe, or even in Warner's own history. Warner has been in bad stuff before. The infamous failed 2001 AOL Time Warner merger still has it beat. The Time Warner merger was incredible because AOL merged with Time Warner and they lost like $100 billion worth of value back when $100 billion was really a lot of money because it was like about 20 years ago, a little longer. So that's a whole other long story. But this is another reason why, and I've done at least 2 videos about this so far, Warner Bros. Discovery is not up for sale. Not now, not in 2 years, probably not in 10 years. And the basic reason why is this. The people who had Discovery stock, and these are important people who trust David Zaslav tremendously, a lot of the current board members, they have lost value of their stock since this merger because they went from a stable, relatively, stock to this merger where 70% of the stock ownership is owned by people who don't even care about the company, never wanted the stock, never bought the stock. Those original Discovery holders before pre-merger who trusted Zaslav, they've lost a big chunk of money, maybe as much as 50%. I'd have to go and do a lot of homework, which we're in the middle of a video over here, okay? I don't have time to do that right now for you guys. I would, but I can't. So, but the point is, they've lost money. So even if the stock price doubles, they're not selling at double the stock price, okay? They can't because that would even just be break even, which would make this whole thing a waste. They're not selling it, okay? Many of the biggest profile blunders facing the company relate to how it's handled DC shows and films. So presumably some of the pressure to fix it will end up on Gunn and Safran's laps. None of the pressure is going to be on those guys. None. Those of us who know about stuff like this and who recognize that, like, excuse me, you need merit-based content. You need content to be on brand. You need not all these woke things woven into the stories and ruining the characters like Marvel has now done on every freaking project. You don't need to be swapping out Superman for Supergirl or Batgirl for Batman and so on and so on. We know, they don't think that's true. They think that they should Marvelize DC. That's never going to happen. And whatever changes need to happen are going to continue to change to protect the brands. Making sense of the DC film slate. This is fair to list as an issue. Reportedly, part of the reason for the search and the stepping down of former DC film head Walter Hamada was that Warner Bros. Discovery president David Zaslav wanted DC to have its equivalent to Marvel Studios' Kevin Feige. Well, I mean, he did say that publicly, didn't he? So that was part of it. Someone who can guide the films and TV shows produced in a cohesive direction. Currently, though, DC's slate is anything but cohesive. Well, it's fair to say it's not really cohesive. There are different projects and they are going in different directions, but there's also an intention to get it all together. And interestingly, as I found in this article, they do mention that Gunn knows how to make continuity work. And if you ever want to get my interest, just mention the word continuity in context of comic book characters and stories, comics, film, TV, whatever. I'm a big continuity fan, meaning when the stories fit together and what happens in this story means something for those characters and also other characters and the rest of the story world. That has always been fascinating to me. It's something that's really only existed over time in comic books. And of course, they don't really pay attention to that in comic books anymore, which is why I need to fix that. Upcoming films set to be released include movies that take place in the same general universe established by 2013's Man of Steel, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, The Flash, Blue Beetle, but also 2 movies that exist in their own franchises, the in-development sequel to this year's The Batman and Joker Folie Deux, a follow-up to 2019's Joker. As far as Batman and Joker, I mean, it would be great if Batman was in continuity. If it's going to be its own universe, like, you know, they're doing with Spider-Man. Spider-Man's getting his Spider-Verse. They already have huge success at Sony with Spider-Man, a huge success with Venom. Venom is not really appearing in the Marvel Universe. Like, maybe they'll bring him over at some point with something, but it's like, it's fine. You can do that with Batman. He's a big enough franchise that if you want to have 2 Batman films a year, 3, you know, in the Batman universe with Matt Reeves, whatever, you can do that. And then occasionally this Batman can jump into that film or whatever. That's this, I don't know. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. That's what I see happening with the Batman universe, unless they decide not to go with my brilliant idea and just do their own thing. Who knows? But I think it makes sense. Considering how successful both of the previous films in those series were critically and commercially, Warner Bros. Discovery presumably wants as many installments for both as possible, but to keep the quality. And you're not going to see them fooling around with quality at Warner Bros. Discovery. They are not doing that. But at the same time, plans seem to be in place to keep the Man of Steel universe going, judging from Henry Cavill's promise that he will be in front of another film as Superman following his Black Adam cameo. And I have seen some news on that, and supposedly his deal is absolutely set for Man of Steel 2, and for a couple of appearances. I just saw that today. So I'm sure it's true because he said he's coming back as Superman, so he obviously has to be in a movie to do that. He's not going to be doing that from his house. He's going to be doing that in a movie. In terms of television, DC Slate is something of a grab bag, with the CW's Arrowverse franchise of superhero shows, Gunn's Peacemaker series set in the main film universe, and a handful of other independent HBO Max shows like Titans and Doom Patrol. Several upcoming shows have run into false starts early on in development, with a spin-off of The Batman focused on Arkham Asylum burning through 2 showrunners. And a Green Lantern series from Greg Bertolani being redeveloped completely after scripts were written. Obviously for a lot less money, because that's how they play. They ain't going to spend no $120 million on a Green Lantern short series. It's not happening. Ezra Miller and The Flash. You have to admit that's a problem. Other issues for DC Films contend with is the rollout for their upcoming films The Flash and Aquaman The Lost Kingdom. The Flash, set for 2023, has plenty of DC fan service, which is what we like. All these films will and have to have fan service, including the return of Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, but star Ezra Miller has spent the bulk of 2022 and considerable time before that creating Baroque levels of controversy. Lots and lots of controversy. Between allegations of physical violence, improper conduct towards children, arrests for assault, and a current trial for felony burglary that could result in him facing up to 26 years in prison, the actor's highly publicized troubles make The Flash a thorny proposition. The image rehab has begun. Miller issued an apology for his actions in August, saying he's seeking treatment for his mental illness, and promised he's committed to doing the necessary work to get back to a healthy, safe, and productive stage in his life. Hopefully he will. We hope so. Although not nearly on the same level, next year will feature the release of Aquaman and Lost Kingdom, which features Amber Heard. She is trouble. She spent this summer, if there's anything that I'm not so wild about, is their treatment of Johnny Depp at Warner Bros. Discovery. He's been disrespected, and Amber Heard has been protected. I don't know why they do that. I assume it's under the pay grade of David Zaslav. It's not something that he messes with because it's too small, but it's an important issue. So it's troubling. But other than that, they're doing pretty good. She spent this summer on the receiving end of an intense social media harassment campaign, which, wait a minute, no, she didn't. She was criticized. There was no intense, I don't agree with this author. She made a big mess. She made some really serious false accusations against Johnny Depp, and she got caught for it. And she lost terribly in court, and she should have lost in court. I am not a fan of her. And I'm not a fan of people being treated that way. That's really, really not appropriate. Moving on. Can Batgirl rise again? No, Batgirl cannot rise again. There were a lot of complaints from basically the woke mobs and woke media about Batgirl being canceled. Scoob Holiday Haunt was canceled, but Batgirl was more upsetting because they had it all planned where Batgirl was going to come along and she was going to essentially replace Batman, and it was just absurdities in that film. And it was also done at a production level that was below standard for any sort of serious release, and it got canceled. HBO Max cancellation, cuts, and consolidations. Now this this is a problem in that it's a challenge. Problem is just a challenge. But shortly after the Batgirl situation, it was announced that Warner Bros. Discovery is planning to merge HBO Max with its other streaming service, Discovery Plus. Now, that is a huge opportunity for them because they're going to save a lot of money that way on all the back-end stuff, all the programming, the programmers, all the tech stuff, all kinds of administrative stuff. Plus, they're going to save money on marketing because they're not marketing in competition with each other. And they can promote all of the merged channel across all of the Discovery. The merged app for streaming, they'll now be able to promote on all the Discovery channels and all of the outlets that they get from WarnerMedia. And they have a tremendous number of channels and all sorts of ways of promoting through WarnerMedia. So it's really a fantastic deal for them to merge the two together. It's going to be a lot of work, and it is a challenge. But it's a great opportunity for them. They've done the numbers. They know what they're doing. Some shows already in production were canceled, including animated Batman cartoon Caped Crusader. Caped Crusader is being pitched to other platforms, and whether it's Apple or Netflix or Hulu, somebody's going to pick it up. And the great thing about that too is that series is going to be promoted. They're going to get paid for it. And they're going to be promoting Batman in a big way. You know, if Apple gets it, Netflix, whoever gets it, they're going to be promoting Warner Brothers Discovery's intellectual property. So promoting Batman Caped Crusader at the expense by their competitor, at their competitor's own expense, they're getting paid for licensing. Doesn't cost them anything. And it promotes Batman for the next film and all the other Batman places they're promoting. So it's a great deal for them. They don't have to have any risk involved. So fans worried about several of DC shows on the platform are worried, including acclaimed Harley Quinn animated series and Peacemaker both appear to be safe for now, with Harley Quinn getting renewed in August and Gunn himself telling fans on Twitter to calm down. Yeah, they're going to do another Peacemaker, especially with Gunn in his position. It gives Peacemaker more importance, with Gunn amazingly being in charge of DC Studios now. Outside of currently airing shows, HBO Max took the unusual move over the summer of pulling about 70 original titles from the service. 70 titles. The reason behind the removal is unclear, but many of the shows are completely unavailable to rent or buy via any other method, effectively rendering them legally inaccessible. Well, it's not that unclear. The clarity was they could declare them worthless, and then they could get a tax break for doing it. And those shows, for the purpose of their strategy for the business and for what kind of content they want to have on HBO Max and what they want to have on their other channels, they are worthless. They don't need them. If they could sell them, they'd sell them, but nobody else apparently wants them. You know, that's why like Batman's Caped Crusader title, that's not worthless. A lot of other people want to pay for it. But this series, Chad, or whatever this is, you know, it's Chad. Nobody wants it. Otherwise, they'd write him a check and they could have it in 2 seconds. T-Net's in crisis. Another area of Warner Bros. Discovery to be gutted by the merger and the company's aggressive cost-cutting is the brand TNT's cable channels, TBS, TNT, and True TV. In April, shortly after the merger, it was reported that all the channels would be pausing their development of new scripted series. Do you know why they're doing that? They're canceling. They're not going to continue Snowpiercer. TBS has True American Dad and the final season of comedy anthology Miracle Workers. Why are they doing that? Why aren't they financing more new original scripted series? Because they cost a fortune to make. And they don't bring in extra subscribers to their cable channels. You know, so WarnerMedia is running this business like, well, you know, let's have something impressive on the channel. It's like, well, yes, you can do that, but what's the business case? The business case wasn't there. So it's got to go. Now, the season 2, speaking of Chad, Nassim Pedrad's series Chad was removed from the channel schedule the day it was intended to air, and has since been shopped to Roku. It remains unclear when the remaining shows will air, if on the channels, and what Warner Bros. Discovery overall plan for the 3 networks is. Notably, TNT acquired U.S. rights to the British drama series The Lazarus Project, just to make its future even more confusing. CNN has massive layoffs. We covered this just recently. You've been hearing about it too. The biggest cut at CNN was them coming in at the new management of Warner Bros. Discovery and saying CNN Plus is a total disaster. They spent $300 million of WarnerMedia money launching the production side of CNN Plus, and another $100 million to market it. $400 million blown. They wiped it out completely at Warner Bros. Discovery, new management, 30 days after its launch. No interest. There was no interest in it. There's no interest in trying to develop CNN Plus as its own streaming service. You know, this idea of having one little streaming service when they've got this kind of a management team and these kinds of resources to offer the streaming service, like, okay, let's have this little streaming service and that little streaming service and that one big, massive streaming service. That's what they want. And eventually they will have CNN content on the newly merged Discovery HBO Max master streaming service, but none of this stuff, none of the kind of content that they had on CNN Plus. State of animation. This is another big question mark, and that's absolutely true. Warner Bros. Discovery holds a portfolio of beloved animated properties like Looney Tunes, Scooby-Doo, and Cartoon Network IP like Powerpuff Girls and Samurai Jack. But significant layoffs hit the department's animated division in October. 25% of everybody in the TV division, actually 26%. A ton of people laid off. Animation led, that layoff in animation led people to speculate that Cartoon Network would move away from original shows to develop spin-offs of existing content. One of the Discovery sources say that that is not what's happening. Lastly, they cover the Warner Brothers Discovery's Rooster Teeth controversy. This is really not that big of a controversy. This is just an employee that was there. She felt she wasn't treated well, and it was sort of a social media kind of blow up. But there's really no major liability. There's no financial issue or financial interest in anything related to this. A major issue that they left off is what are they going to do about the comic book publishing? I have made a couple of videos about what they're doing with comics. I'm very interested in comics. They're doing two major things with the comics. One, they're investing in the digital delivery of their comics. They have a digital platform that they got as part of the acquisition and the merger, and they're putting more resources into it. They're going to be launching it in a few other countries very soon. They're going to launch it in Mexico and Brazil, and then roll out some other foreign countries. They like that kind of distribution. Just by the nature of the investment in the digital comics distribution alone, it's obvious that they're not going to put resources of cash, and even more important than cash, management time, into talking about a business that they're not going to be staying in. They're not going to publish digitally their comic books and have someone else actually put them together. They're only doing DC Comics through their digital platform. That business has been in business for a few years. I don't know the numbers. It's obviously generating money, or they wouldn't be doing it. But it also generates a lot of information of what brands of their DC titles are of interest and which ones are of no interest. Get a lot of customer information from things like that. And they are in the global intellectual property business. They need to know which properties are the most compelling and how interested people are in them. And the digital platform for selling the comics really actually does help them. Even if they only had 100,000 people on it, and I'm sure they have more. I don't know the numbers again, but that's enough to get good statistical information to make decisions. The other thing they're going to clearly do is the comics are not going to be far out of step with where they're going in TV and film. So they recently had a bisexual Superman, and they were doing something with gay Batman or something. I did one video about it. I don't exactly know what it was. But that kind of stuff that's just not going on and isn't going to be going on in the film and TV side, it's not going to be permitted to continue in comics. It's just not. All the woke stuff in comics. What they're doing with the comics to correct them now, pretty clearly, if you work, and some people do, work at WarnerMedia that listen, or Warner Brothers Discovery now, that work and listen to my videos, basically people get the message. They see what's going on. You know, they follow my channel, they follow other people, they read what's going on, they're inside the company. They know that nonsense is getting cleared out of the company at a very fast pace. So it's easiest for people to correct their own actions, and then for management to then go in eventually and say, okay, Jim Lee, you've had 90 days, you've had 180 days. What have you done? What's your plan to do next? Do what next? You know, so they can go and they can report back to upper management and show financial results, editorial decisions, explanations, at which point I do think Jim Lee will probably disappoint them. And I think that they'll have another person or two to come in on the management side of the comics, but to basically take the mostly cleaned up situation at DC, for example, the ongoing bisexual Superman, John Kent, was canceled last month. And they're allowing them to wrap up the property with a 6-issue limited series. And now regular Superman's coming back. How are you going to defend bringing back Henry Cavill as Superman and saying, oh yeah, but we killed off the Superman in the comics, and we have this bisexual son of his running around, and like it doesn't make any sense for the property. It never did. It doesn't now. And the people that you have to answer to when you're like David Zaslav, your upper management for Warner Bros. Discovery, is people like investors. You get questions in interviews, creative people, other business people, people they're trying to bring into the company. They may be looking to do deals with other companies of some kind. Everything they do has to have some coherent sense about it, or the company and the management team lose credibility. So just from the standpoint of credibility, no, they're not going to allow what's been going on at DC Comics, the woke free-for-all, to continue. It'll correct itself for the most part. I would estimate about 80% is going to correct itself at DC Comics without any upper management having to snap their fingers. And then, because Jim Lee is not going to have a sensible strategic direction of what to do with the publishing business, they'll bring in a publishing executive professional who will have since been up to speed on everything and will lead a successful DC Comics where they're doing their own publishing and they're doing their own digital comics. I say often, I do think eventually they'll just get to doing graphic novels rather than periodicals. They seem to make a lot more sense, but it won't matter much. They'll be good comics. They'll be the kind of comics that when you say good comics, that's what you're going to get when you're thinking of that. All right, let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. I really appreciate your feedback. I learn a lot from you guys. I really, really can't thank you enough for that kind of support. Please do make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up when you like it. And I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.